Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our weekly LinkedIn Live. Today, we have Jason Williams on the show. And if you are local to coastal Virginia, you have probably seen his face around. Jason has an impressive background in both psychology and religion. He began his career as the owner of a cheer and tumbling gym. And for the first several ventures, this would change him into a serial entrepreneur where he would then go to run photography agencies and then eventually lead into coaching business leaders. Jason has consistently leaned into growth, creativity, and leadership. Today, he works directly with companies and their executive teams to help them get unstuck, align their vision, and really bring them clarity. He is a certified EOS implementer and sales outgrowth advisor. And Jason brings structure to the chaos when it comes to growing a business. So, welcome to the show, Jason. Super happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, Lauren. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, if you read the description of today's show, one thing that I am really passionate about is the crossover between psychology and business and how our natural human instincts bleed into the way we lead, the way we market to each other, the way that we buy. And people spend their entire lives studying psychology. So I know that Jason, we talked about it a little bit before the show that he minored in psychology, but I really want to kick that off with our conversation today. So tell me about just your psychology background. Tell me about your background as far as education goes.
Yeah, the psych was a minor. I started as my major, so I didn't tell you that earlier. I did start as a psych major, and then I shifted it. School was not my thing. I'm not great at sitting for long periods of time and reading, 100 pages of something that's not that interesting. But psych has always been a part of, I guess, everything that we do, and I think that's why it was interesting to me, figuring myself out, figuring out how other people function. And then I think the biggest transition outside of my stint in church leadership, the biggest transition where it really had impact is in sales. And so that's where it's kind of come full circle is my recent jump into, it's actually called Outgrow, not Outgrowth.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Outgrow is a venture that I started when I realized that my clients needed help with revenue. And I realized how absolutely awful sales strategy is in companies between, I mean, really from 0 to maybe 50 million. There's almost no discernible strategy. And how psychology plays into that became really, really important. And so that's where kind of all the pieces come together and connect.
What do you mean by there's no strategy? Because you see people that they say, oh, well, I've got my business development team on it and they talk to my sales and then that's their strategy. What do you mean by no strategy?
So I work with companies from a million to about 100 million in revenue. And so I kind of see every aspect of where businesses are. And when I say no strategy, when I ask most sales teams, and I'm talking about Fortune 500 company sales teams, what is your strategy? They're going to say something along the lines of we measure um, emails, phone calls, face to face, and then that's about it. They don't know their conversion rate. Like one of the questions I'll ask is, okay, so how many coffees lead to the next step in whatever that sales cycle looks like? And then how many of those close? So how many coffees result in business? And what does it take? 10 coffees to generate a $10,000 deal? Like what's the price per coffee? Nobody can answer these questions. Like nobody really knows the clear strategy for how they're going to acquire a lead, move the lead through the pipeline, and execute on that to actually close a sale. Everybody just kind of sprays and prays. Like that's really the term for what most companies are doing. And it's universal. Nobody knows what they're doing. And so it was really fun for me to jump into the sales side and start giving some coaching and strategy around that. And on average, we're growing companies 15 to 30% year over year who follow this clear sales strategy.
Yeah. So I correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, there's going to be a strategy that's going to, it could be different for company A and could be different for company B. What really makes what you do so special? Or is it not special? It's just something that you go in and you actually write down strategy, you hit things with logic, whereas before people just spray as they go. What makes what you're doing different?
There's two things that make it extremely different. So first of all, yes, way different, like dramatically different than the average thing. So average sales training, so to speak, is going to be somebody like me, kind of in my field, is going to come in and they're going to maybe do an all-day conference with your team, and they're going to teach them, you know, the words to say, how to convert somebody, what not to say. They're going to go through all this training. And of course, the people are going to remember about 5% of it. And then 3 months later, they're going to remember none of it. Or maybe they took one little nugget and applied it and kept it. So the two things that set us apart from the traditional sales training is, number one, we don't just train sales teams, we train all customer facing employees. And the reason that we do that is, I don't know if you're a fan of The Office. I'm a huge fan of The Office, the show.
Yes.
There's one episode in there where they're freaking out because Marge made a sale. Well, Marge was one of the delivery people in the warehouse. She was the manly looking like big girl. And she made a sale because essentially they applied the techniques that we coach, which is every customer facing person has an opportunity to make a sale. So why aren't we training everyone who interacts with the client to strategically ask the right questions, to pivot, to set the salespeople up for a sale? Like that's first. We train all customer facing team members. The second thing is we coach them on very specific executable strategy. Actually, there's three things. So we're giving them the specific questions to ask and how to ask them, and then how to move to a pivot. And all those behaviors are actually measured. And here's the third thing, every single week. So we don't come in and train and leave. We stay with companies. Every week, you're getting a report back that tells you exactly every single person, what questions did they ask? How many times did they pivot? How many times did they reach out when nothing was wrong to a client? How many times did they ask for a referral? How many times did they ask about internal referrals, external referrals, percentage of business? In other words, like I'm a food distributor and I'm selling to a restaurant. One of the questions I should be asking that restaurant is, hey, Bob, the food sales guy, how much of your business do we have right now? Like how much is taken by us, the small guy, versus a bigger food company? And they're going to say, oh, 10%. Okay, how can I help you more? We're measuring strategies like that are very granular and very specific, and we measure them every single week. So I'm going to see that your top guy executed on 36 actions that lead to sales last week, and your bottom guy only did 8. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge part. We don't come in and train and leave. This is about sales doing, not sales training.
Yeah. So what does that look like realistically? Because you're not being salesy here. I am a firm believer of these episodes that we're not trying to be salesy, but this is stuff that real people have so many issues with, right? I hear it all the time. Oh, I don't know how to track this in my company. And it's stuff that we just don't really want to advertise. So I want you to be able to bring some strategies to people to get them to think about their company, because it's no sales strategy is perfect. Otherwise we'd be making millions of dollars and probably wouldn't be interacting with each other. Right. So what is it that you're going in and you're teaching people? Are they doing this all virtually? Is this in person? How are they tracking all of these different conversations and metrics and remembering what questions to ask? How does that process work?
So it starts really simple. And this is, I believe in giving value before you sell anyway. So Absolutely. I'll give your listeners exactly like well, first of all, this is the book. Mm-hmm. So this is where all the secrets are. And when I say all, I literally mean they give away the farm in that book. It's called Outgrow, real simple. The other one's called Pick Up the Phone and Sell. I get nothing from selling those. The author gets it, but I get nothing. So go get those books if you want to know the inside. In terms of what to do, let me back up a little bit and talk about what one of my companies did that has nothing to do with Outgrow, because we just want to just basic strategy. The holy grail of business is to figure out, if I spend X amount of dollars I get this number of clients, and on average, they spend this amount of money. So let's take Facebook ads. So if I spend $100 on Facebook and I get 10 leads and I can close 2, my cost per lead is $50. My cost per close lead, not cost per lead. Cost per lead was 10. Cost per close lead would be 50 because I closed 2 out of 10. And then you have to go, okay, how much money did I make off of those? Well, I sold $1,000 worth of stuff, giving me $950, but my profit margin's only 50%. So I actually made $400 on a $50 lead. Hopefully people followed that.
Yeah.
That's the holy grail of business, when you can figure out how to spend this much and it results in a sale that is profitable for the company. That's where we want to get. So what we did in one of my companies that I own, we ran 3 simultaneous marketing efforts to see how many leads could we get. It was really easy to measure because 2 of them produced virtually nothing. I think one produced like 2 leads, one produced 0 leads. That was mailers. And we did them per the correct way, and we still received nothing for them. And then we ran Facebook ads. Well, at the end of it, Facebook ads outperformed everything. Mm-hmm. Now we have some semblance of a strategy. Spend $100, get this number of leads, get this number of sales. And we have that down now. We know exactly what the numbers are. Now we have some sense of a sales strategy, and then you start tweaking it and you go, okay, for example, in that specific deal, we started pulling in non-qualified clients. So you had people canceling appointments and people not spending where we needed them to spend. So it was real easy. We changed our language. In the consultation for the clients that came in, we started saying, are you comfortable spending X amount of dollars on family portraits? And if they said no, we would say, this probably isn't a fit for you. So that's what we built, is we built out this very specific strategy. There's outgrow principles that are laid into that, but that's where you start. Mm-hmm. What action produces business? Most companies that I interact with are doing action for action's sake. It's just what we do. We met Lauren through a networking event, right?
Yeah.
But how many people in that room are measuring the effects of those networking events? How many hours did you spend? How many leads did you get? How many of those leads converted? And how much money did you make off those leads? I would guess 1 out of 100.
Absolutely. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not 1 out of the 100, because I realized whenever in-person networking, it just doesn't work for a company like mine. So you got to be able to measure that or figure out what works for your company.
Well, it also doesn't work if it's not intentional. Like if you just move around the room and you're just having beers with your buddies, which sometimes that's exactly why I go, is because I just want to see some of my friends and hang out. But if all you're doing is going and having beers with your buddies and you're not converting, that's not a marketing strategy. That's wasting company resources.
Absolutely. And there's some people out there that would just want to do that. So let's talk about that just a little bit, because I have heard, and I will never call out names here, but I have heard some pretty horrific sales tactics as I am working a room, networking at events. And out of the corner of my ear, one time that really stuck out with me, there was this individual and they had a few drinks at that point. And they immediately, right out of the gate, it's good to qualify people, but they said, are you the decision maker for your company? And you could just immediately tell the person just clammed up a little bit. It's like, no. And so then I saw this individual go around and then move on to the next person and say, hey, I'm just really looking to get X, Y, and Z sold. I'd like to talk to the decision maker. Do you think that you would be the one? Would you be interested in this? And it was like, oh my gosh, there's clearly some good sales questions to be asking in this situation, but this individual was not asking the correct questions. We're all here for a purpose, whether that is to make more business connections, make more sales, whatever the case may be, but you got to do it tactfully. So how are you approaching asking good questions at events that aren't just shoving your product down somebody's throat, but still cultivating a relationship?
So great question. I actually had a conversation with my practice manager. I was very frustrated with the time I was spending in networking. And I said, this is not going anywhere. And so I ended up reading a book called The Genius Network. I can't remember the name of the guy, but essentially it fit with the core values of my company. And one of the core values for my company is help first. What that means is, to your point, when we started this was give first. Don't jump in here and try to sell what I do. So I want to give value. And if somebody sees some value in that and they want more, they'll reach out to me. So I actually, in that moment, I flipped what I do at networking events. The last networking event that I went to, I probably spent the bulk of my time helping a guy who sold art understand how to structure his payroll, because he was paying everybody as an employee. And I said, you can't do it. You're losing almost your entire margin. You need to pay them as subcontractors because they are legally subcontractors. So I just walk around the room and see who I can help. And if I don't get anything out of it, that's perfectly fine. I helped a bunch of people. I've got a ton of knowledge through my business experience that I can give back. And that's really what I started doing. So rather than going in trying to figure out how I could get connected to somebody, I go in looking how I can help. And if I run into a decision maker and I feel like one of the two things that I specialize in would help them, again, I offer free. Like, I'll do a 90-minute meeting with you or a 2-hour meeting. Let's break some of these concepts down and see if it would be a fit for you. And if it is, then we can decide if we want to move forward together. But I don't want to work with anybody, just anybody either. So back to core values, I have a set of core values that I operate by. And if I sense that that individual doesn't operate on similar core values, it's not going to be a fit for us to work together. So I'm doing a lot to qualify clients before I bring them in. Not to mention what I do is pretty high ticket. And so there's a lot of qualifiers that need to happen. So I think you asked for questions, but really I think it's the way I approach it that's different, not the questions I ask.
Yeah. So essentially, you are going into a room. The people in this room ideally are already all qualified. Am I tracking there? Or most of them are qualified?
No, almost
No.
none of them qualified in most networking situations. Now, today, I'm actually speaking at Chamber of Commerce on Peninsula. Most of those people in the room are qualified. That's a different scenario, but that's not a networking group. That's me going and teaching. I'm doing a core value talk in a couple hours. So that's different. But most of the time, when I don't want to name a specific event, but the event where we see each other most, almost no one in the room is qualified to have a conversation with me on a business level, which is why I don't make it a high commitment to go all the time. And when I go, I try to help.
Yeah. So then what would be the benefit? And I'm speaking not just for your company, but for other people that are resonating with this and saying, oh, yeah, I have an event that's similar that I'm going to, that the people aren't mostly qualified. Why is it that you would want to continue to network in an event like that and provide a bunch of value to people that may not be qualified and people that just, oh, yeah, that sounds good. And then they don't really circle back, because then at that point, you have your list of, let's say, 100 people that went to the event. Then you have the 15 that you talked to and really provided value, but it doesn't really go beyond that if they're not qualified. So why would somebody want to continue to do that?
I think first, because everybody's on the climb somewhere on the entrepreneurial journey. And if those of us who are ahead of others, wherever that is, I'm ahead of a lot of people, I'm behind a ton of people. If we don't reach back and help the next guy up the next level, if we're not reaching back and giving them a hand, I think that's really disrespectful, because none of us made it on our own to the level that we're currently at. So I'm looking to help first because it's a part of who I am. I think it's the right thing to do in the business community. You know, I've had people, man, I still, there was one guy, I'll give you his first name. He's retired since, but his name is Nigel, and he ran $150 million company. And my company was just getting to breaking $500,000. And he would have breakfast with me anytime I wanted. I couldn't give him anything. I had nothing to give, but he was able to help me significantly. 2008, particularly when the recession hit and everything was upside down, he was a huge help. So I try to pay it forward and help other people. And then I've got people who, you know, they're running multi-million-dollar businesses who help me. I've got some people who run million-dollar businesses who still help me in some way, even though I'm helping them figure out how to structure their companies too. So But the other thing is this, and this is where it gets really practical. So I think that's just like a moral issue.
Yeah.
Do the right thing, help other people. But the second thing is if you go to an event once a month and you help 5 people, you ask for nothing in return. At the end of the year, you've helped 60 people. When we help people, there is a natural tendency as a human being to want to repay that. They did a study, I believe it was at McDonald's. All they did is when a kid came in, they gave him a balloon. That's it. Gave him a balloon. The kids who received the balloon, their purchase was something like 40% higher than the people who didn't receive a balloon. And the reason is because humans are reciprocal. We feel like if someone does something for us, we're like, oh, I feel imbalanced now. I think the seesaw's tipped. And if you tip it for 60 people, one of those wants to give back. And eventually they go, Jason, I got to introduce you to somebody. My uncle's boss is in the position you were talking about. Like, they're struggling with this. Could you meet with them? And that's what happens. That's the whole concept of the Genius Network, is that all this guy did, I can't remember his name, it's killing me. But all this guy did was helped everyone he ran into. And he knew more people than anybody else. And business flowed in because he did the right thing. And I think when we do the right thing, I think it comes back around.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good feel-good story, of course. But whenever you're speaking with a company that has, let's say, a sales team of 15 people that they're trying to manage, and they say, go out and help, go in this event and help, you're going to build your network. Of course, I don't disagree with you there, but how do we avoid wasting, for lack of better term, company time on just outright helping people, hoping that it's going to come back and produce a return?
So when you leave with a stack of business cards, what do you do with them?
Add them on LinkedIn. Most people don't do that, but that's what I do. Most
people just set them on their desk and hope to do something with them at some point.
Yep.
At least you're doing LinkedIn. So this is one of the, I'm back. We did full circle. We came right back to Outgrow.
Yep.
So in my practice, let me back up and kind of share my Outgrow story, because I think it's got value for everybody. And this is a huge takeaway from this conversation if somebody wants to get engaged in it. I first got introduced to Outgrow through the owner of Outgrow, the founder. His name is Alex Goldfein. He's the author of the books. And in the EOS community, EOS is Entrepreneurial Operating System. So it's kind of like a handbook for how to run your business, because no entrepreneurial company comes with one. We all just make stuff up. So I teach companies how to scale and structure their companies. So what happened was Alex started reaching out to other EOS implementers who do what I do and saying, would you like some help with sales? I have a cohort where we're meeting in a group. Everybody's going to meet for, I think it was 4 weeks. It might've been 6. And I'm going to help you guys sell. And the price that he charged was ridiculously inexpensive in our community. And we were all like, why is this guy doing this for basically free? Like, of course I'll pay that. Like, that's fine. And it went to a charity. It didn't even go to him. So he pulled us in. And my takeaway from that cohort, by the way, my business was flat. I had nothing. And this was last May through the summer and into early fall. I thought early fall would break open the door. It did not. I was just flat. I had a great set of clients, but my clients are not forever. And I wasn't building, and I was very frustrated. And essentially the book I mentioned earlier, Pick Up the Phone and Sell, is like, pick up the phone, make a call, ask some strategic questions. So this would be, I'll give you the example. It's like me calling you. Say I call, and this may happen. I may call you and go, Lauren, how's business? How are you doing? And we just chat a little bit. And then I just go, Lauren, do you know anyone that I can help? That's simple. And most of the time you're going to say, I can't think of anybody right now, but I'll get back to you. But now I'm at the top of your mind. Now you've thought of me because we talked that week. And what that did is I started to make a commitment to make 20 calls a week. I failed miserably in the first quarter I did it. I did 58 instead of 240. But I've added this year 6 clients. So I went from no meetings whatsoever to adding 6 clients. That's not how many meetings I had. That's how many actual clients. My clients are all 5-figure clients. So very quickly, I saw the impact from the outgrow habits of just pick up the phone and connect. So now when I go to a networking event, I'm looking for anyone I can connect with. It doesn't matter if I can sell them anything or not. If we connected, I'm going to pick up the phone at some point and I'm going to go, Lauren, how can I help you with your business right now? Is there anything I can do for you? Are you frustrated about anything? And a lot of times it's me connecting you with someone else. You're like, oh, you know what? We bought 3 cars. We can't get anybody to wrap them. And I'm like, I got 2 wrap owners that I know. Let me connect you with both of them. And then you can pick the one that you like the best and go with them. So I might just help 4 or 5 more people that day, but eventually it turns around and helping people turns into business if you stay in contact. If you leave the stack of, I was looking, I know I got a stack of business cards around here somewhere, but if you leave the stack on your desk and you do nothing with it, no good. But if you call and show genuine interest in genuine interest, and then at some point you say, is there anything I can do for you? Did you know I'm doing this? Do you know anybody else I can help? Those questions convert to business.
And when you just pick up the phone and randomly call somebody that you met at an event, let's say a few weeks ago, what question are you asking them for them to actually open up? Because I have seen some psychology tips out there for networking where it's all in how you frame the question. And you really don't want to say, oh, what are you struggling with? How is it going? Because people immediately, when they're given a question, they are inclined to just give you an answer and really shut you down. So what is a way that you are able to ask people to actually get them to open up to you and say, well, Jason, I am actually struggling with this? Because nobody's going to want to lead with what they're struggling with, what they need help with.
Usually it comes out of a conversation I already had with them. So the guy that I mentioned in the last networking event that I helped with his staffing with the way that he was structured, I might call him and just check in and say, hey, I know we talked about that. Do you want me to connect you to my CPA to give you a little bit of help around that? Is there anything else I can do for you? And usually that question is very interesting. I called one of my buddies who I know isn't going to use me. He's not going to use me. It's a business connection. But we've been friends for a couple of years now in the EO community, Entrepreneurs Organization. So there's about 100 of us in that organization. We all own companies. And I just asked him, I said, hey, I just wanted to check in on you. I haven't heard from you for a while. How are things? Blah, blah, blah. And I said at some point, I said, is there anything I can do for you right now? Who do you need to be connected to that I might be able to help you connect to? And then at the end, I said, do you know anybody I can help? And that was the moment when he went, you know what? I think my brother could use your help. He has a company in Chicago. He connected me. I flew out, met with his brother and his team. They said, yes, we're not ready to go right now, but we'd like to go in the fall. So I probably have a client out of that phone call. And I knew I couldn't help the guy. I just called him to check on him. Mm-hmm. So it converts. Did I answer your question or did I just run off on a little rabbit trail there?
You answered the question. I do want to circle back to the previous question, though, is why would a company want to invest resources and company time into an organization where it's not guaranteed, it's not qualified, they're just sending their salespeople out to have these conversations to potentially help and hope that it returns business? Of course, if that's how you want to approach business, I think that's fine, but some might not look at that and be like, that's a very logical decision. We need to move these people to a different event and approach things differently.
Yep. Great question. And I'll be honest with you, I actually met with a client yesterday and they mentioned going to doctor's offices and bringing them a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. And I said, I will outsell you 10-1 with the phone over the coffee. 10-1. I promise you. For one thing, I'm going to make 10 phone calls in the time it takes them to just buy the coffee. I'm going to pick up the phone and make 10 phone calls. I've got one buddy that owns a company and they're cold calling, which is not what I'm recommending. I'm recommending calling people that you know or have a connection with. But they're making 400 phone calls a week. It's 80 a day. Yep. How many coffees can you deliver to somebody in a day? 4? Yeah. Maybe 8 if you're really, really good. But that's compared to 80. So again, it's a 1 to 10 ratio, how many calls you can make versus how many coffees you can deliver. And so, no, I wouldn't say that that's a primary strategy. I would say picking up the phone and making connections is the primary strategy. Networking is something, first of all, you ask, why would a company do that? They're all doing it already. Because I watch all the people that are paid to be there. I mean, half the room is on their own. They're solopreneurs. But there is half the room that is paid. One of them comes from the company that I just mentioned, does 400 calls a week from their sales team. But that person, in addition to being at the networking event, they also have to make, I can't remember the number. I've got it written down. They have to make like 50 calls or something like that, in addition to being at that networking event. So that company is balancing what they have that sales guy doing.
Yeah.
So that's not the strategy I recommend. The strategy I recommend is the phone. Asking the strategic questions that are all in the book. Pick up the phone and sell. They're in the Outgrow book. That would be where I would start. And then you do networking events when you're kind of running cold, or like your lead list is getting a little old. You may go to a networking event strategically, trying to pick one that has people that you want to meet, or people who are connected to the people you want to meet. That's where I would introduce that. It's supplemental, not primary.
That's okay. That's a good distinction for companies that are listening out there, because I think there's a lot of companies that are held together by duct tape and bubble gum. And that is one of my friends said that, and it's just stuck with me because I think that is so true. But a lot of companies just kind of hide that fact that, no, that's not me. That's not how we do things. It's very strategic. But I think there's a lot of companies out there that are just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Is this networking event going to stick? Is this marketing strategy going to stick? Is this cold email outreach, this cold calls? Like, what is going to stick? And they're just kind of haphazardly doing things. So your suggestion is to be supplemental with your in-person networking. So your primary.
Also, I think one thing that's missed in there, though, Lauren, is as a company, and I don't know where the marker is. I would say anything under 10 million. If you're generating less than $10 million a year, every single marketing thing that you do should be measured. It has to be measurable. How many hours? How much did it cost? What were the results? Show me freaking results. Don't just tell me I met some nice people at the networking event. I don't give a crap.
Yeah.
Where did that take you? Like, show. And it may take 6 months to get any sense of numbers, which is, I think most entrepreneurial companies are really impatient and they don't give it the time it needs to start looking at statistics. We're still figuring out the Facebook ad cost to final sale, because we have like an 8-week sales cycle. So even if we've been running it 6 months, we still don't have great figures, and we're seasonal. This is the company I'm referring to. So we still don't have strong numbers. We've been at this since September. And we're still working out exactly what are the numbers going to come out to. We really need a year of data to figure it out. But the thing is, we measure everything we do. Nothing that we're investing in is just random. It's all measured. We're looking at the numbers all the time. We're looking at conversion rates all the time. Most companies are not doing that. They're missing measurables.
And so what's the easiest way to track all of this stuff in one spot without everything just getting super confusing? Because if you have a marketing department, if you've got a contracted marketing company that you're working with alongside of your marketing department, like a lot of my clients, then you've got your sales, then you've got your BD, and all of these things are meant to make sales. So how are you tracking all of these efforts in one spot where it's not just getting super overwhelming, super convoluted, and then I don't care, it's going to work. Does that make sense?
Yep. You asked, so they're going to get a shout out. It's 90.io. It's the word 90, NINETY.io. That is the software that my clients use to track their metrics. And here's the key. What we coach is the leadership team has 5 to 15 numbers that tell the story of the business. If you're on an island and you can't access any information, and you could get this sheet dropped into your lap that has 5 to 15 measurables, leading and lagging, and 12 to 13 weeks of trailing information, would you know how your company's doing? And so that's at the top. You've got the leadership team, but then underneath, you're going to have like a marketing and sales scorecard. You're going to have an operations scorecard, a finance scorecard. So moving to the part that we're talking about, in the marketing scorecard, I want to know, and we do know, how much did we spend on Facebook? How many leads came in directly because of Facebook? How many other leads came in from other sources? What was the conversion rate on both? And then what was the conversion to sale? So we know that if we spend $100, we get 4 leads, we close 2, and the average sale is about $1,250. So that resulted in $5,000, and we spent what, $50 to get it.
Yeah.
So we have a 1% ratio, like spend to conversion. That's what I want to see, but it's 5 to 15 numbers. Don't try to do 40. You'll lose track of everything. We track them weekly. That's critical. Every week we track this number. It is not a monthly number. It's a weekly number. And so at the end of the week, we've got all this stuff that we put together, and there's a spreadsheet looking tool called a scorecard inside of 90. There's a bunch of tools that do it, by the way. There's Stretty, there's 90, there's EOS One, Bloom, I think, does it. So there's a bunch of options out there. We just used a spreadsheet when we started. Just had a simple spreadsheet with tabs, and one was the leadership team scorecard that kind of had numbers from everywhere. And then we had sales and marketing, and then operations and finance.
Yep.
So that's what we're doing. We're tracking it every single week, simple numbers with a goal, and it's on track or it's off track.
Yeah. And I think what's really underrated is the fact that we can use AI to help. It's simple as that. You don't have to pay anything for it. You can go on ChatGPT, you can go on Gemini, all these free resources, and have it prompt it correctly to have it be the best sales tracker in the world. And you can prompt it to help you come up with a spreadsheet template. So it's not rocket science, what you're saying. It's just it's repetition. It's about being patient and actually giving things the time it needs to work.
It's a really simple book by EOS that's in our library called Data. You want to know how to do scorecarding? That's your book.
Yeah.
I read a lot, so almost everything I'll tie back to somebody who knows more than I do, which is that book. They know more than I do. And so if you want to dig in, that's where to get your numbers.
Yeah. I think that's very insightful. At the end, we'll have to post the link to some of these resources in the comments so that people, if they do have questions about particular things, they can check out some of these books or just some of these softwares, because it was a conversation that I had the other day. I overheard some folks, and we got in a conversation about tracking the efforts of business development, and how business development is one of those roles where not all the time is it's tied to sales. You want it to make sales from the efforts, but there's a lot of times where you have a business developer that's doing an amazing job. They're out there making tons of connections. Everybody knows that person and knows the business because of that person, and they're tied together. But actually translating what the efforts that person is doing in person to dollars and to appointment set is really a challenge and it came from a business owner that I was surprised to hear them say that it was a challenge for them and tracking that. So it's really just about finding the right metric. And I guess in that case, it would be how many people you met, how many people you followed up with, and then how much it cost you to do that.
Well, yeah. And in our ecosystem, we've got eight things that we're tracking. So if you want that list, it's proactive calls. So that's calling a customer or a contact when nothing's wrong. You're just reaching out. How are you doing? That's kind of how the conversation goes. Did you know question? Did you know we do XYZ? So just informing them, particularly if you're in like the distribution world. I've got a company that will remain unnamed today because of the things I'm going to say, that they service my office with coffee. Do you know how many times that company in 3 years has reached out to me to ask me if I need anything or check up on me?
None.
Not one time. I found out on my own that they do a bunch of things. We spend a few grand a year on snacks and drinks for my office. They've never once asked me about anything else. I just had the coffee machine and called them because I acquired it when I moved into the building. And so I just had them. Not one time. I've called multiple times over the phone to make orders. Not one time has the person who picked up the phone said, by the way, did you know that we offer paper supplies and we can supply your toilet paper, your paper towels, your paper plates, your forks, knives? Not one time. So did you know, reverse, did you know, hey, what else are you working on right now that I can help you with? We've got internal referral. I want to make sure I get them all. That's 4. Internal referral, which is more towards larger, like enterprise level companies. Do you know the person who runs the southeast side of the United States? So I could talk to them about how I could help them as well. External referral, which is, Lauren, who else do you know that I could help the way that I've helped you if you're a client? Handwritten note. And I'm missing 2 right now. What percentage of business do we have that you currently do? That food illustration from earlier. And I missed one of those. It'll probably come to me as soon as we finish this podcast. So yeah, but those questions generate results. Yeah. So when we ask those and we track it, it's going to produce somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 30% year over year increase in revenue because it's specific. We're no longer just leaving it up to having a coffee. Coffee can literally lead nowhere because all we talked about was our dogs.
Yep.
We never got down to business.
It wasn't strategic. And I think that's what it boils down to, is just having a logical, strategic plan about not just your sales team, not just your marketing, your business development, but what you said at the very, very start of this is everybody in the company that is customer facing needs to have an idea of these questions and an idea of how to approach conversations. Because more than likely, when you're picking up that company to call about reordering your coffee and your snacks, if that person just fills the order, okay, sounds good, thanks, sir, they had the opportunity to upsell you on so many different things. And if there was incentive for them to do it, then they probably would have.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. And it's just something that hasn't been trained. I don't know what the percentage is, so I won't make one up like I typically do. 90% of all companies, most companies are order takers. They are waiting for the marketing to do its job and to just push a lead in, and then they just take the order. They're not salespeople. They're not even trained in sales. They're just taking orders and letting the word of mouth do its job or whatever. And they're leaving, again, I'm going to keep using this statistic because this is a proven one. This isn't made up, 15 to 30% on the table. Yeah. You know, if 1 out of 3 phone calls results in an additional sale, holy smokes, like the difference it could make with very little effort. It's just asking a question. If this company had started asking me these questions 3 years ago, they would be getting several $1,000s extra from me every single year. And how many clients do they have? I'm guessing thousands. Yeah. 1,000 clients is an extra $300,000 a year in sales. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah. And this comes down to, I think, a lack of knowledge at the leadership level. I don't know what I said. Did I say knowledge ship?
I think you made up a new word, Lauren.
I think I did too. I'm like, hold on, my brain is working slower than what I'm speaking. I think it comes down to a lack of knowledge at the leadership level of companies, because all they have to do is say, yes, we met this quota. We'd like it to be better. You get on your sales team a little bit, you get on your marketing team, you come up with a new little strategy, invest a little bit more money, you get a bigger output, and said, see, here we go. We delivered a little bit extra. But at that point, you're just inching past that finish line, even a little bit more and a little bit more. But it sounds like there are so many ways that you can go in, and if you audit a company correctly, you can identify ways that you're not just inching past that finish line anymore. You are working with the entire company to figure out, here's a way that we can increase top line. Here's a way that we can increase top line. And it seems like it doesn't really cost them anything, because it's stuff they're already doing, already picking up these order phone calls, already at these events. So it's just tweaking how they're handling it.
So we actually draw a customer model where we separate their, let's say you've got 9 clients, and we're going to categorize 3 of them are A clients, 3 are B, 3 are C. The 3 A clients spend $10,000. The B clients, 3 of those spend 5, and then the A client or the C client spend 1. When I draw this model, I ask the client, the $10,000 clients that we started with, how many of those could we get to 20,000? And they're like, oh, probably at least 2 or 3. And I draw a little line, and then I go, how many of the $5,000 clients can we get to 10? Like, have the potential to go to 10? Light bulb starts going on. How many of the 1,000 can we get to? How many prospects do you have that we can get into here? how many past clients could we pull back into this? We get finished and we've got, 2, 3, 10, $100 million on the board. No new leads. We didn't even talk about getting new leads. All we talked about was what exists and could we strategically move them to another level by asking them questions like, by the way, would you like us to handle this for you? By the way, I noticed that you don't buy any paper products. Could we add paper products to your order next time? I'd like to help you more. We love working with you. Oh my gosh. We're just not doing it. We're just freaking taking orders and we're not even suggesting that somebody do more business with us. Why would we do that? We got a great company. You do good things. Do more of it. So that's where I get really fired up is I'm like, you're leaving so much money on the table, so much money just by not asking strategic questions.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of their Hormozis. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Sure.
Layla Hormozi had a podcast and it was gotta be a year ago. And I was listening to it and she was talking about they were auditing a company and this is a very large company, probably on the, 50 million and up company. And they were having this big annual event every single year. And they were inviting the community and they made some sales from it. And it used to be a really big revenue generator and then it dipped out. And so they were talking about completely Xing this event because it decreased in the revenue that this event was generating. And so it was as simple as auditing this event that they had been doing for years and finding ways that they were already doing and how to just tweak that strategy a little bit to increase the revenue. And they did, and it worked, and they got it back to baseline. And then, so instead of just having that event once a year, they're like, well, why don't we have this event quarterly? And then that one event that used to be a really good revenue generator dipped off. They got it back to baseline. They replicated it, and then it was a significant revenue generator in the business. And I think that's very symbolic for what you're talking about is there could be stuff that has worked in the past and it's not working as much anymore. And maybe it's just because it was a simple oversight. Things stopped getting regulated as much. We just said, okay, yeah, it's working. And we haven't taken the time to audit it. So it really, I think, just goes back to every quarter or every 6 months, really auditing your processes, see what's working and do more of what's working. We talk about this in marketing all the time. Do more of what's working, less of what's not, and then duplicate it. You continue to duplicate it.
I think the biggest problem is people don't know what's not working because they either don't stick to it long enough or those measurables are absent. And so they don't even pay attention. They're just, again, it's on a hope and a prayer.
Yeah.
And that's not how you run a business. That's how you start a business. but it's not how you keep running it. At some point, we have to mature as business owners and start taking responsibility for what's happening in our company and figure out how to drive it and not just let it happen to us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, what's funny is we see that a lot with LinkedIn because LinkedIn is something that people have traditionally not seen. Some people have, but most people do not see this as a revenue generating platform. They don't understand how having their employees, their business development people active on this platform could actually make the company money. But it routes back to what you were saying earlier, how everybody that's customer facing, you're customer facing on LinkedIn with a profile, and it's not much different than in person. And there's so much company time. If you add it all up, the amount of time that you spent just kind of mindlessly scrolling or looking through the platform or just shaking your hands, kissing the babies on LinkedIn, people don't realize how that could actually be used to make money as well. And so I think it just boils down to a simple audit. You just got to make sure that you're auditing everything that you're doing and figuring out why and make it strategic. And if it's not strategic, then don't do it.
Absolutely. And I think narrowing the field too, like just pick three. Pick the three things that you're going to do in business development and then measure them and determine how long that you're probably gonna have to do it longer than is comfortable, maybe 90 days. A networking event might take 6 months to figure out because a lot of networking things meet monthly or quarterly. So it might take a year to figure out whether or not there's value to that. But you've got to get granular too. You can't just be general and go, well, I went to that event and I didn't close any business. Networking events are not designed to close business. Numbnuts. Like figure that out ahead of time and know that you're playing the long game when you do that. So Yeah, I think you got to have strategy. And that's where we're back full circle. There's no strategy.
Mm-hmm. 6 months to a year is typically what I advise people just on the marketing side of things when working with companies on their LinkedIn and them really deciding if they're going to invest in their employees to learn about this platform. Give it 6 months to a year because you're not going to see any significant results. You'll see results within the first week, the first month of, okay, yeah, you're meeting a lot of people, you're seeing a lot of people, a lot of their stuff. Your content is getting distributed to a lot of different people. But what does that mean? Why is that important? And where you figure out the why is in that 6 months and onward metric, because you know what's sticking around, what's consistently working, and what wasn't just a one-off thing.
Yeah, like when we launched the 3 initiatives that we did in the fall, we knew it was 90 days to measure the initial input. Like how many leads did we get? We couldn't measure all the conversions and everything, but we knew that. And so we set up 90 days. That was a quarter objective for us, is to run these programs. The next quarter was to measure end results. We only measured Facebook because the other 2 were trash. So that's exactly how that works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are the top 3 things that you're currently advising people to pick and stick with as far as their outreach efforts and their, just the efforts in general? You said pick 3.
That's going to vary by industry, but I'll tell you, because of what I do with Outgrow, number 1 is calls, proactive calls, calling people when nothing is wrong. That would absolutely be number 1. Number 2 and 3, it's just because of what I do and the experience I've had with it. It's going to be asking, like, how many of those strategic questions did you ask? And I'm going to go with, did you know, reverse did you know, and referral. So did you know we do X? What else do you need that I can help you with? And then do you know anyone else I can help? The do you know anyone I can help has become a part of my daily vocabulary. I do it without thinking. You know anybody I can help? And I don't mean, by the way, with money. Mm-hmm. I mean, who do you know I could help? I've done 90-minute meetings at no charge for solopreneurs. I know I'm not getting anything out of that, but I wanted to help them. And so I brought them in and I did it. I've done it for people who have fledgling businesses. I know they can't afford me, but I want to help. And one of those, come to think of it, introduced me to somebody. And then that somebody introduced me to somebody. And that looks like it's going to produce quite a bit of business. Yeah. So just filling in and helping first. So I think those would be my 3. The make the call, and then ask those 3 questions. I guess that's 4.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you. So this is my algorithms on LinkedIn and social media have really figured out that I like psychology and I like to see the transition and how psychology relates to business, how it relates to conversations that you have. And I have it written down here. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I have it written down here, that when a person is being asked a question, it raises a little door in the brain that says, I need to be careful about this answer. So if you're responding to a statement, your brain does not have that little security guard there. What do you think about that statement? Because a lot of what you're giving me is questions. Do you know anyone that I can help? How can we help you? Are we currently, you're not buying paper products from us? Why? All of these are questions that you're asking companies. So what is your opinion on that statement? Do you think it's just, there's really no validity to it? Do you think, what are your thoughts?
No, there's definitely validity to it. And I think that one of the reasons that we coach the personal interest first is to drop the guard. And one of the things that I tell my clients all the time, if you're being fake, don't bother picking up the phone. If you don't actually care about that person, if you wouldn't help them for free, then don't bother. And so I think that my success has come in that realm because I genuinely care about people. Like, Lauren, you and I don't know each other that well, but if you called me and said, Jason, I need to talk to you about some business stuff, I'm really struggling with some things, I would drop whatever I was doing if I could and help you, genuinely. Like, that's just how I'm wired up. But I think people can read through the BS And
Mhm.
so if you call and you're just agenda driven and you really don't intend to help or don't want to help, they're going to read through it. And the door starts to, what'd you say, close, open?
Yeah, the little door in your brain says I need to be careful about how I answer.
Yes, and I get that 100%. I think the traditional sales methodology really sets you up for that.
Mm,
Like, if somebody calls and says, "Do you like drinking dirty water?" You know what they're doing. Of course, I don't like drinking dirty water. Like, who likes that? Yeah. Well, would you like it to be cleaner? Would you like to have fresh, clean water throughout your house? You're selling me a water cleaning system. I already know this. And
yeah.
so, yeah, that guard, like my gate went up immediately, and
Mhm.
I'm blocking. But if it's someone that has helped me first, back to my core value, if they have already helped me and not asked anything in return, I think that gate drops a good bit. And now you're looking to help them in return. And that's why I think help first is such a critical value for people is we need to start with unselfishly helping others, and that will come back to us tenfold.
Absolutely. And so I know we only have a few minutes left, but I want to throw a minor curveball. Maybe it's not a curveball at you. But what about, so we're talking about using in person networking as a good supplement to this, building the relationship, bringing that barrier down, increasing trust, and giving like understanding, okay, I do want to help this person because you've met them, you know them. What
Right.
about the companies that are selling, such as my own? We don't really do a whole lot of business in Virginia. We do business all over, targeting Europe and all of America, North of America. So, what about companies that are doing virtual sales, software, any type of company that's not
Mhm.
having in person, that's just not beneficial to them? How does that change things?
I don't think it does in terms of the strategy. You pick up the phone and call people and help them.
Mhm.
And the more people that you help, the bigger your circle will grow. I really think you got to go back to Genius Network, and that book is phenomenal in terms of how what his strategy has been. All he does is helps people with nothing expected in return. He is just kind and good to people. And I think we're missing a lot of that. Everybody runs around. I watch at the networking events. It's everybody is there to get. Very rarely do you run into somebody who's there to give. And I think if we change our mindset into giving first, genuinely helping people, picking up the phone and connecting with people, people are dying for connection in our world right now. It's a very segregated world. We stay solo so much of the time. More and more of the world is single. People are dying for connection. So just calling and checking up on somebody actually can mean that can change their whole week. That might be the only conversation that you've shifted about them for the entire week. They've talked about everybody else, and then you make it about them. How are you doing? I mean, genuinely, you look tired the last time I talked to you. Maybe don't say that to a woman particularly, but you seem like you got a lot going on. Is there anything I can do to help you lighten that load a little bit? That genuinely means something to people. And
Yeah.
even more so if you're like in your case, when it's across the states, it's in different countries, the phone's even more powerful then.
Mhm.
So sticking to my guns.
Mic drop there. I think that it is so well said. I think that we are living in a very segregated world. No matter if they're not in America or not, there's a lot of
Yeah.
turmoil happening, no matter what side of the fence you're on. And it is, I think that is just a powerful message, is just to chuck up on people because you never know what's going on. It's super cheesy, but you really don't. You don't have a freaking clue what's going on behind closed doors. So,
Yep. And usually
uh,
it's a lot worse than what you think. Like people are really struggling. And so showing some genuine care goes a long way.
absolutely. And that's why I'm trying to do what I do with this show. The purpose of this show for me is to really show that not everything is all neat and perfect and organized as it seems to be in business. And that's something that I feel like as a whole, society has really built a wall around with businesses, and everybody's perfect. When I met you, I wouldn't have had a clue that any struggles were happening just because of how
Yeah.
you present yourself. And I think there's a lot of power into showing, no, I'm actually struggling with this thing, because then you can create a community around that and then grow from it, rather than just, no, I'm a successful business person and that's that. And then behind closed doors be screaming because you're so frustrated. So
I think we've all done that.
Oh, absolutely. I still do that. Last week, the week of the 5th was pretty bad. So I understand. I think we all go through it from time to time. So thank you, Jason. This has been a pleasure. I would love to see if you could post the link to the books in the comments of this stream. I think that could be really helpful to people that like to read and are interested in more about what you have to talk about. And then, are you active on LinkedIn? Can people connect with you on there?
They can.
Okay, perfect. And reach out to you if they've got any questions about EOS or Outgrow. Jason is the guy. So do you have anything else to add before we wrap up the stream?
I think that's it. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. And until next time, see you all later. Bye.